Real quick before we jump into the video, guys, for the rest of this year I'm going to be on a fundraising campaign to raise a minimum of £1,000 for the Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital. For more information on the charity and what it does, and for the donation links, please look in the description below. And thank you all for your continued support. Enjoy the show. What's going on, guys? RBL Teacher in the house, and I'm here with a bit of a fun video for you. This is a video where I'm going to be turning my RBL Draft into a solid ladder team, a solid VGC team, and I'm going to take you through the process of how I built my team and stuff like that. So I've tested the team out that I've actually built, and it's actually got to very, very high showdown ladder right now. I'm currently in around the 1700 mark. I haven't played for a few days, so I might have decayed a little bit, but nonetheless, we are pretty high ladder with this team. So we are definitely in a good spot. I have yet to take this team to in-game, but I want to take you through my draft. I want to take you through like how I modified it and stuff like that, and then I'll talk you through the actual team that we ended up building. So in order to do that, above me on the screen right now is my actual draft itself. It is worth pointing out that at the time of recording this video, this is prior to making one change, which I will talk about at the end. But I quickly want to go through the plans before anything else. So the concept of my actual overall draft was to essentially work around these objectives. Torkoal plus Chlorophyll is really, really strong, although admittedly our Chlorophyll user is Lilligant, which is not ideal in this situation. We don't really want our Chlorophyll mon to be a support Pokemon, so that's something that we're gonna have to make an adjustment for. Grimmsnarl plus Fast Offensive is always a really, really nice option. Our Grimmsnarl is our G-Max in this instance, as this is a G-Max draft. I didn't see a need for any other G-Max on my team, so I opted for the utility. We're not going to be maxing Grimmsnarl all that often, so we probably won't be running G-Max Grimmsnarl later on. And our fast Pokemon, we kind of have two that do the same job in a way, with Thundurus and Pheromosa both being able to fulfill this slot. Pheromosa, of course, can be a support Pokemon, so it was a well-rounded pick. It was my second pick in the entire draft, so there's obviously a good reason to pick it. So we do have that plan objectively done. However, there is one issue with this, is the fact that Grimmsnarl has no realistic way of dropping your opponent's defensive stat, which pairs up better with Thundurus. So that can be a bit of an issue. And Special Pheromosa is pretty strong. Compare that up with Fake Tears on Grimmsnarl, which is also really, really nice, but we are not going to be focusing too much on that. Trick Room is a very, very important dimension to have an answer to in the current VGC format. Trick Room is definitely very, very strong. Right now, there's a lot of very good Trick Room offensive Pokemon, like Torkoal, like Glastria, like Stakataka, Regirock, Registeel. Trying to think of a special offensive Trick Room one that's really obnoxious. I've even seen a G-Max Charizard Trick Room team with, like, Iron Ball. Yeah, that's been a pretty fun team. I think that's a Rio to Super special. But yeah, I do like the option of having a Trick Room setup plus a physical and a specially offensive Pokemon. We do have our Trick Room setter is currently in DD Male, which does have its own pitfalls. In DD Male with Psychic Terrain actually prevents the Prankster from Grimmsnarl or Thundurus from affecting the opposing team, but it can still affect your own side team. So that's something to bear in mind as well with this team. And of course, we do have our special offensive Trick Room mon in Torkoal and our physically offensive mon in Steelix, as well as Munchlax. Munchlax is technically an option, but we'll talk about that one in a second. And then 3 Dynamax targets. This is a minimum, I think, for a ladder team. I think having at least 3 good Dynamax options and a couple of, like, fringe Dynamax options, which are, like, super situational but are worth it. I think that's a must on any team for ladder. I think you need to have a wide diversity of teams. So this is the plan. This is what we're going to work with. So let's look at my draft, and then we'll immediately start making some cuts. Because as you can see, there's more than 6 Pokemon here, so we are going to need to make some Pokemon changes. So the first thing we're going to do is drop the not fully evolved Pokemon. The reason why we just dropped them is because these Pokemon were situationally drafted specifically for certain matchups in the RBL. which are not reflective. It's important to know that Draft League ladder, or Draft League, and Ranked ladder are two very, very different disciplines. Ranked ladder, you have to prepare for everything. Draft League, you prepare for each. So what we're going to do here is we're going to cut the Dracloak, the Munchlax, and the Wartortle straight away. Now, this means that we still have 7 Pokemon left. So this next cut is kind of important. And ultimately, as much as I think Pheromosa is a fantastic Pokemon, and I've had a lot of fun trying to use it this season, I think on a team for consistency purposes, Pheromosa's frailty, and the fact that it almost has to take the Focus Sash most matchups, just feels really uncomfortable for me on a team where I want a lot of diversity. So we're going to cut Pheromosa from the team as well. So that leaves us with our 6 Pokemon. But we are not done yet, because it gets a lot harder than this. It's not as easy as just cutting down to 6 Pokemon and plugging and playing. So let's talk about the 6 that we've got here, and let's talk about the optimal changes that we're going to make. So we are definitely going to be keeping Grimmsnarl, for sure. Grimmsnarl is a fantastic utility Pokemon. It's got a major spike in usage. It fits on any team, but we are not going to worry about G-Max. We do not need. So, if we look at our plans here, we have Torkoal plus Chlorophyll user in Lilligant. Now, I mentioned that I would rather not have a support Pokemon as my Chlorophyll user, because I would like my Sun user to actually be doing a significant amount of damage. And unsurprisingly, to no one, the change we're going to make here is bring G-Max Venusaur. G-Max Venusaur is phenomenally strong right now. It has Chlorophyll, it has coverage to hit fire types in Earth Power, for example. And of course, it has Sleep Powder as a very threatening option. So this is much more optimal, in my opinion, as a build, to have Torkoal plus G-Max Venusaur. Venusaur also works for an out of Trick Room mode, because you're not necessarily going to be focusing on Trick Room. Yes, you do have Torkoal, which is fantastic in Trick Room, but it's not necessarily primary a target. So now we have our Grimmsnarl, we have our Sun option. Now we need to make a decision on our fast offensive Pokemon. So Thundurus is currently in that position, and while it does have a really good special attack set, the one problem that I have with Thundurus in this team is if I want to run it special, is it doesn't get a natural fire move. It doesn't get Heat Wave, it doesn't get like Flamethrower or Overheat or anything like that. The only fire move it does get is Weather Ball and Sun, which means I'm almost forced to bring Torkoal next to it just to have a Max Flare option. Now, one thing I do love about Thundurus is the ability to Dynamax it, Max Airstream, as well as Max Lightning. Max Lightning preventing sleep is a really, really strong option. It works really well against the Sun Mirror. It works really well against things like Butterfree. As that comes. There's a lot of Sleep Powder Pokemon that can make a presence, but G-Max Venusaur being one of them. So, the option for me here, and the much more consistent option, is to drop Thundurus for Zapdos. Zapdos, while it is slightly slower, it can offer a huge amount of damage output, and it does get access to Heat Wave. So Zapdos is a much more consistent option with this team. It means I do not need to rely on bringing Torkoal if I want to bring Grimmsnarl plus fast offensive Zapdos. This gives me a little bit more diversity in the team already. Now, the next issue we're going to have to deal with is our Trick Room setup. Now, I mentioned before about Indeedee Male having Psychic Terrain, which causes issues or kind of forces issues where Grimmsnarl can't Fake Tears or Fake Out or Taunt or anything like that with the Psychic Terrain up. So it's much easier to just take a Trick Room setup that doesn't have that drawback. And so when I was testing this team originally, I was kind of toying between a few options. There's Dusclops, there's Porygon 2, which is really, really strong right now. And I did actually consider the option of going for Stakataka as a Trick Room setter, purely because it is one of the slowest Trick Room setters in the game. So it makes a lot of sense to consider Stakataka as an option. Plus, of course, it can set up Trick Room for itself, which is pretty nice. It can be a very potent Trick Room. Although I've not really had too much success with the Stack Attacker setup. So we opted not to go for Stack Attacker, and we also opted for Porygon 2 instead. I did test Dusclops for quite a while. The issue I found with Dusclops is it doesn't give me any offensive pressure against things like Landorus. Landorus is actually very, very strong against this team because, of course, it does do a heck of a number on things like Torkoal. It can max Airstream on G-Max Venusaur. It can Rockfall on Zapdos and stuff like that. So we do have a lot of issues taking on Landorus. We do have a bit of issues with support Thundurus, for example. So those are kind of things we want to look at. Porygon 2 gets access to Ice Beam, which is really, really good coverage against Landorus. It definitely helps relieve a little bit of that pressure. And now we have the option of our Trick Room physical offensive one to look at. Now, I've had a lot of fun using Steelix. I think Steelix is a really, really good option. You know, it has a decent defense stat. It actually has the same defensive stat as the Pokemon that we're replacing it with. But the problem with it being Steel Ground is it is weak to water, which is the same problem with Torkoal. And yes, we do have a Venusaur that can patch it up, but we don't want too many weaknesses to the same type on this team if we can avoid it. So what we're going to do here is we are going to drop Steelix for an option that is kind of interesting to think about. So in original testing, I was looking at Registeel. Again, I was still looking at Stack Attacker. I toyed with the idea of Galastria, and I toyed with the idea of Regirock. Statistically, especially in recent performances, rock types have actually been very, very strong in the format. Galastria is a no-go for me because being an ice type and weak to fire in a sun team is no-go zone in my opinion. So that was an option that we didn't take away. And the kind of same deal here is for Stack Attacker, is the fact that it is not the most optimal in my opinion. I have seen Stack Attacker in some regional tournaments play really, really well. So that's something that we are going to consider the option of, because there's a lot of different things we can do. Now, I can see an argument for both Registeel and Regirock to be on this team. Registeel is a really, really strong defensive pivot. If you can bait moves that would hit, you know, how other Pokemon on the team for super effective damage that Registeel resists, for example, things like Rock-type moves, like Max Rockfalls, and stuff like that. It's fairly easy to switch it in. Registeel eats the hit, doesn't care, and then can potentially set up with things like Iron Defense and Amnesia with Body Press. That is an option that I think is really, really interesting, but I'm not a huge fan of it. I tested it a little bit, and I didn't find as much success with Registeel on the team as I did with Regirock. So Regirock is going to take on the team, and one of the things that I really like about Regirock is 3 of the 4 weaknesses that Venusaur has, Regirock is super effective against, right? It's strong against flying, it's strong against fire, and it's strong against ice. The only thing that is not strong is psychic. So that's something to consider. Regirock pairs up really nicely with this team. It allows me to fill in some voids that we otherwise would have. So let's start getting to work on building the team. So we have our 6 Pokemon. So let's jump on over to our showdown page and let's start putting in our Pokemon. So Torkoal is going to be the inevitable. This set is usually pretty much always going to be the same. You're always going to run Charcoal with Drought. But the moveset for me kind of changed over time. Originally, I didn't run Eruption. I only ran Burning Jealousy, but I've actually found success running both. The reason why is Eruption, obviously, if you're in Trick Room, does more damage than Burning Jealousy does, assuming you haven't taken any HP damage when Charcoal has come in. Burning Jealousy is a really, really great move against Dynamax, because if your opponent Dynamaxes and gets themselves a stat boost, Burning Jealousy guarantees burns it. And of course, if you're given a stat boost to both your opposing Pokemon and neither of them are a fire type, Burning Jealousy is going to burn both opponents. And that could be very, very scary for your opponents, especially if they've got like Urshifu or like really, really scary good physical attackers on their team. They don't want to get burned. So Burning Jealousy is very nice. For coverage moves, Earth Power is really good against opposing Sun. It's really nice against things like Colossal, for example, which is quite weak to ground, which definitely helps it out. And then Protect. Protect is always relatively standard. I will show you the EVs and all of that stuff at the end, because I had a bit of an interesting time picking this, and I'll show you the full team as and when we are done. So, Venusaur is the next one, of course. We are running G-Max because G-Max Venusaur is busted. It is really, really strong. Now, I ran through a bunch of different items originally when I did this. I've ran Life Orb in the past. I've ran Weakness Policy on this in the past. But one set that I actually found recently to be really interesting is Cobra Berry. This allows you to deal with max Airstream, no problem. Which... obviously, in Sun Mirror, if you've got your opponent's got Zapdos, like that, which is kind of standard in a Sun Mirror, then Cobra Berry, the damage isn't the biggest deal in the world. Obviously, the mitigation of the damage is always nice, but it just makes the Sun Mirror a little bit more comfortable. It makes it easier to get your Vine Lash off. In order to get the Vine Lash to get the most damage, we run Leaf Storm. Some people run Giga Drain or Frenzy Plant. I just prefer Leaf Storm in general. It's definitely a stronger hit. We run Sludge Bomb because that is our max Ooze target. We run Earth Power again for opposing fire types. And then the last move, Sleep Powder. Now, Sleep Powder is a move that I've seen some people start dropping, but Sleep Powder is insanely good. Sleep Powder is a very, very scary move. Yes, it's wildly inaccurate, but to be able to put your opposing Pokemon to sleep, even if it's just for one turn, and prevent the damage, is really, really good support for the rest of the team. And of course, when you G-Max this, which likely you're gonna G-Max this if you're bringing Sun anyway, it does turn into Max Guard, which is more than capable of dealing with any impending threats into it. So we're gonna focus on bringing Cobra Berry. Cobra Berry I really like. I do like the recovery of options for Black Sludge as well. That is something I did consider, but I didn't really find I liked it. So the next thing we're going to talk about is Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl, obviously, pretty much brilliant utility on any team, in all honesty, but the set I found the most consistent has been the Light Clay Screen set, with Reflect, Light Screen. Fake Tears is the option I ran. Instead, this slot has been swapped between like Scary Face, Fake Tears, Thunder Wave I've tried before, and a few other little things. Taunt has been on this set, but I really like Fake Tears a lot, and we'll talk about Fake Tears when we go next. And then Spirit Break is really good against special attack. So that's the set we run for this, with Fake Tears on the set. And then again, we'll do EVs in a second, but nonetheless, this is a very, very solid set in my opinion. Again, like, I do think Fake Tears could be swapped out, but the reason why we run Fake Tears is because of Zapdos. Zapdos is insanely strong offensively when you run into a Fake Tears mon. There's Fake Tears plus, like, Hurricane. I believe it's Thunder that a lot of people run on this. I've run Thunder before. I'm not entirely sure if I did run Thunder or if I just ran Thunderbolt, or Discharge for that matter, but I think it was Thunder. And then Heat Wave, which is what we mentioned that we replaced this for, and then Project. Nothing too complicated with this move there. The item is where it changed for me. So, on a couple of regional teams, I've seen this thing run Life Orb, which makes a lot of sense. You know, it allows it to hit as hard as possible. The one problem with Life Orb, in my opinion, is Sleep Powder. We talked about Sleep Powder against Sun. Obviously, in Sun, Venusaur naturally will outspeed Zapdos. The one thing we do not want is if we do Dynamax this Zapdos, we do not want it to get slept. So, the item that we've actually been running on it more recently has been Safety Goggles. This makes it very, very nice to handle with. Against Sleep Powder, it means you can't put me to sleep. I also don't take Sandstorm or Hail damage, which is also really... But yeah, Safety Goggles, really, really good item for this for Zapdos. It's very, very strong. And it does a huge amount of damage. So, after a Fake Tears, this thing is still one-shotting things even without the Life Orbs. So, we do not need to worry about the extra damage when we hit hard. Anyway, so The next option, really, we gotta look at is our Trick Room setter, which is, of course, Porygon 2 in this instance. I like Porygon 2 a lot. Standard Eviolite set with Download. Download is fantastic. It is a really, really good ability, especially if you can get a special attack boost. It's very, very powerful. And a moveset of choice is Tri Attack, Ice Beam, Recover, and Protect. It's basically, or not Recover, Trick Room. I think it's actually Protect we don't run. I can't remember. I think this is the stat. I did actually move away from Trick Room originally, sometimes with this team, and just ran Dynamax Porygon 2, which was kind of funny, because this was bait most Trick Room mons, but yeah, it doesn't work. Not on this team. But again, standard Porygon 2 set, nothing too complicated here. Ally Switch is an option as well if you don't need the recovery, but I really think Recover is just on Trick Room. And the last Pokemon is the Resistance, if you like, the Regirock. Clear Body is so damn good as an ability, preventing you from getting stat dropped. And the item of choice on this is Weakness Policy. Now, this is the reason I'm not running it on Torkoal or Venusaur, is it made way for Weakness Policy Regirock. And this thing is very, very strong if you want Cursed Drain Punch. This allows you to 1v1 opposing Porygon 2, which is really, really nice. Stomping Tantrum is another move that we are seeing a little bit more usage of late. Previously, Ice Punch filled this slot a lot, and then Rock Slide. Rock Slide is pretty much a staple rock move. Pretty much most Pokemon that want to learn Rock Slide will pretty much run it. For the main reason that it hits both targets, and that flinch stance is really, really nice, especially under Trick Room. So that's the core element of the team. That's the items and its moveset. So let me show you the full EV spread of the actual team that we have gone for here. Well, let's move on into here. So, Torkoal, honestly, nothing too surprising to be max HP, max special attack. This gives you as much damage as possible. Oh, of course, the min speed is perfect for Trick Room. This means I outspeed just about everything under Trick Room, so there is absolutely nothing to be scared of here. Yeah, I mentioned Cobra Berry on Venusaur, as you can see, ready to stand in. Pretty wide move spread here. This is actually important because the 204 speed means we outspeed every base speed base 100 speed Pokemon like Zapdos, etc. After a speed drop, or if they gain +1 speed, Venusaur will still outspeed them. So that's really, really nice. Our HP stat is actually very nice here because this allows us to live a Flare Blitz from Standard Incineroar in Sun. Which Standard Incineroar in Sun right now often runs 4 attack, but Adamant Nature. This basically, he lives that Flare Blitz in Sun, which is very, very nice. It gives us leeway as well, you know, if Sun's not up, then we live the hit even more comfortably. And we do a huge amount of damage with our move spread here. This also pairs up very, very nicely with Porygon 2, which is the potential lead that we often run. The reason this pairs up really nicely is the math between the two EV spreads here is if we face up against opposing Porygon 2, their download gets a physical attack boost and not a special attack boost. Which is very, very important because Porygon 2 doesn't really need physical attack. It's not ever running any moves. So that is the spread really. And we're running the rest of stats into our special attack stat to ramp up our damage output. Our damage output is very, very strong in general once we G-Max, and if we do get to a situation where we can even max Ooze, give ourselves +1 special attack, then yeah, you can see how this thing can just roll over teams with Divine Lash damage, as well as the sheer output that it already provides. Next up, of course, is our Grimmsnarl, running Mixed Bulky. A tiny little bit of speed. This allows us to outspeed opposing Grimmsnarl, because most Grimmsnarls don't actually run any speed investment at all. So that's always nice. The Mixed Bulk means that we live just about everything. We very rarely get one-shot by anything, especially after a screen, which is always nice. The bulk is important here because we do want to get at least one screen up, or at least one Fake Tears off if we can. If we can get both screens up, then it's even better. Like, our opponent's just doing very little damage. And something that I've actually used a few times is Grimmsnarl Venusaur. So I set up screens and then max for Vine Lash. And then opposing damage just feels so lackluster once both screens are up and Venusaur is just up and running with its max. It's a pretty scary option if you want to run that lead. But again, Grimmsnarl fits on most setups in most matchups, so it's not the huge deal for us. But Grim is really, really good with Zapdos, of course. We did actually just run relatively standard. I actually did opt to run Thunderbolt instead of Thunder. I wasn't entirely sure which one I ran because I have tried both. We do have Life Orb on this set, but I am actually going to change that for safety goggles. Better. So that's the option we're going for here. Static is really nice for Parachance as well. Even though it's not ideal if we're running Trick Room. But Para is actually very, very good against opposing Urshifu like that. If it's Focus Sash, it pretty much guarantees that we can deal with it without having to double into it necessarily. But yeah, Hurricane, Heat Wave, Thunderbolt, Protect, pretty standard, nothing too complicated. Nothing too complicated about its moveset either, or its EVs. It pretty much just means that we speed by with opposing which helps us out a little bit. And of course, we briefly mentioned Porygon 2 with the spread, of course. Just bulk. Pure bulk is all we really want from this thing. A tiny little bit of special attack with the Modest nature helps us out a little bit as well. This gives us the option, especially after we get a special attack boost, we can actually one-shot opposing Landorus pretty comfortably if it's dashed. AV, it can live, but a +1 special attack, it generally doesn't. So that's something to bear in mind. But yeah, this thing is our primary Trick Room setter. So a lead option that we've seen with this is Grim Porygon. This basically means that you set up screens, set up Trick Room, let Grimmsnarl go down, and then just literally pop off with Regirock, of course. So Regirock running a little bit of offensive power with a bit of attack stat, a bit of HP. It's already got 200 base defense, so like it really doesn't need any more defense investment. It's got 436 defense at level 100, which is pretty insane. And then, of course, a little bit of SPDF investment. It does help us live some special hits that we don't appreciate, particularly in rain matchups. We can actually take rain-boosted hits pretty well. We don't take it too well, and then, of course, it does proc our policy. If we get a curse up, this thing could roll under Trick Room. It does so much damage. It is very, very scary in the opposing matchup. So it is a really, really solid all-round team. This team did have some inspiration from a regional tournament that I think won in Japan. I could be wrong. But that Japan team had the Life Orb on the Zapdos. And I think it had Scary Face instead of Fake Tears. I think it also had Taunt as well somewhere. I think it only had one screen. I don't remember the entire set off the top of my head. But yeah, this is the kind of team that we're looking at. This is the team I'll be working with. I will be doing some battles on the in-game ladder just to see how well this team pulls up. Like I said, I've hit just around the 1700 ladder with this team. And I think it's one of the most consistent teams out there right now. I think it's a really, really fun team to try. So if you want to try out this team, I'll probably put a Pokepaste in the description down below. If I don't do it, remind me and yell at me. But yeah, that is going to be my RBL 2 ladder team draft. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about the team and if you would recommend any changes, because I'm still relatively new to the format. But either way, guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is Rabombi Teacher. I'm your coach at the Royal Bournemouth Rabombis. Stay safe. Stay awesome. I'll catch you guys next time. Yeah.